Hello and welcome to this Carveco Maker Plus tutorial. In this tutorial, we're going to take a look at modeling within Maker Plus and primarily using the shape editor tool. Now, if you haven't watched the video on the Carveco training page, shape editor, I would strongly suggest watching that first. It's also available on our YouTube channel. So just take a look for the shape editor tool that's in Carveco Maker and take a look at that, and it will explain all of the functions. I'm going to assume that you already know how to do that. So what I'm going to do is to create this badge. So if I rotate around, you can see that it's a relief. And this is done from an image. So the image, if I take a look on the 2D view and then turn off my vectors, you can see that this is the image that I actually created this from. So let's start from scratch. And what I'm going to do is open up this folder and I'm going to grab that image and drag it into the software. I'm not going to save the changes. And then it's asking me to set up my job size or my model size. So I'll set the origin to be in the center and the width, let's say 300 millimeters. Now I'm going to do this one in metric. Most of the tutorials that I do will be in inches, but it's exactly the same, to be honest. If you're working in inches, the only thing that this is going to really affect are a few of the sizes within the shape editor. So it should be exactly the same, really. So width 300 millimeters or 12 inches, select OK, and then it opens up the model. Okay, so when you take a look at this in the 3D view, when it opens up, if I rotate around, you can see that it gives me a better image. Now, personally, I would rather do this in the 2D view because I find that it gives you a much better image. So to do this, what we're going to do is create a bitmap to vector. So I basically want to trace this. I don't want to be drawing all of these vectors out by hand. If I can do it by tracing it, then all the better. So let's go to the bitmap to vector, and then I'm going to reduce the colors, and let's just bring it all the way down to 2. Let's see what it looks like. Okay, so that doesn't look too bad. Now, I may have a problem with the crown. I did when I'd done it before, so I may have to do that manually in a moment, but I know that all of the outside looks okay, to be completely honest. So let's apply that. Select the maroon color as the primary color. And then for some reason, I've got 15 pixels as my speckle size. Let's put that back to the default and then create vectors. So if I drop the contrast down and then let's zoom in here, you can see that the vectors are not too bad. Now, if I wanted to, and I was being really picky, I could mess about with all of these vectors and start editing them. I don't really want to be doing that, to be completely honest with you. Now, the crown here, you can see that it doesn't really look right, and it's a little bit messy. Now, I could use these if I want to, but I'm not going to. I'll show you how to do that. So what I'm going to do is just delete those because I'm not going to use them. I'm going to bring the image back in and I'm going to manually trace around those because I can't really use those at the moment. But the rest look okay. So you can see that I've got an outline shape and I've got all of these areas here. So it looks okay. Now, what I'm going to do just for ease of selection is I'm going to start grouping some of these. So you can see that I've got these all around here. Let's just select all of them. So let me just do that. Probably a lot quicker. And then I'm going to deselect the outside, just so I've got all of these sort of feathers, if you will, or whatever they are. And I'm going to group these together. So go over to group, and you can see they all become purple. Okay, now let's do the same with the text. This is just so it's easier for me to select it afterwards. And I'll select all of these as well, like so. Select that, select this here. Okay, and then select that, and then group that together as well. Okay, so now I can switch to the 3D view. So switch over there, and I'll go back to display the material and turn on the vectors so I can see them. Okay, so I can start creating my relief now because I've got these vectors. So as I said before, if you haven't watched the shape editor video, then I strongly recommend watching that first of all. So first of all, what I'm going to do is create a relief sort of base for it to all sit onto. So I'm going to work from the bottom up, if you will. So to do that, I'm going to select the very outside vector like that. And I'm going to bring that up, give it a base. So if you go to the shape editor, which is here, you can see that it opens up the shape editor, and it also gives you all of these nodes. Now, the reason that the nodes are displayed is that you can move these in real time, and you can affect the actual shape that you're creating. Now, if you don't want to see those, you can just turn off the vectors like so. Now, at the moment, you can't really see anything, but if I add the start height to that, so let's say I add the start height of 5mm, you can see that then it shows the relief that you've just created. Now let's add maybe a square. So you can see that that's added basically a bevel, and it's coming right up to the center. That's not what I want to do whatsoever. What I want to do is just put a little chamfer around this edge. So to do that, what you do is limit it to a height. So if you click limit to height, and then you can see that it's still coming up. That's because I haven't put a height in there. So if I say that the maximum height that I want this to be is 10mm, then the maximum height that will be 10mm. So if I hover over that, take a look at the Z value, then in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see that it's 15. So that is the start height and the height that it's being limited to. So if I change that to something small, let's say like 1, you can see that it adds a 1mm chamfer all the way around the edge. So I'm going to assume that that's okay. Let's just turn on the vectors just so I can see that it doesn't interfere with these vectors here. Okay, so maybe it's a little bit too big. I can see it interfering here. So let's make it smaller. Let's say just 0.5mm. Okay, and that looks okay. Now, importantly, what you need to do is to select apply. If you don't do that and you press cancel, you'll just lose what you've just created. Now, when you do press apply, it changes to preview then. So what happens is you can preview the next relief or the next shape that you want to create. What I'm going to do is just cancel it just so you can take a look at it. So let's turn off the vectors, and you can see that I've just created that outside shape. If I turn on the vectors again, let's open up the shape editor and let's select those vectors. And I'll turn off the vectors again, and let's do a square. Okay, now I'm bringing that up, just straight up. Now you can adjust how harsh it is there. So I'm not doing this to any sort of sizes or figures that I've automatically generated. I'm just doing it until it actually looks good. So let's say I wanted it to be there. You can also add the start height to that if you want to. So it comes up flat. So you can see that I've got a flat there, or you can just have it coming from 0. So it doesn't do that. Now, if you want a negative one, you can do it as subtract, or you can do a minus. And that will be sunk in. So you can do this entirely however you want it. Maybe keep it as a negative. The original one that I've done was a positive, but as you can see, it's really, really easy to do, and you can get some really great results from it. So select apply, and then I can turn on my vectors again. So what I'm going to do here is maybe add a couple of borders. So let's say those two, let's bring both of those up. So just add a start height. So maybe 2 millimeters. Let's see what that looks like. So you can see that comes up by 2 millimeters. If you want to add a chamfer to that, you can do. So to do that, go to square. You can see that that's a full bevel at the moment, or full chamfer. Just limit it to a height. So 0.2, 0.5. Everything's in real time as well, so you can just see it straight away, which is great. So select apply, and then maybe the text. Let's do the same thing for that. Limit it to a height again, and let's limit it to say 0.5. Start height, let's do it the same sort of height. Okay, so that looks okay. So let's apply that. And let's cancel it. Let's take a look at it. Okay, so you can see just really, really quickly that you can start to build up this model. And I'm only basically using one tool, which is the shape editor. Right, so let's take a look at the inside now. Now, the inside, I want this to be a crown, obviously. And I want it to be on a dish. So I want this circle here to be dished. Now, that's pretty easy to do. What you can do is just open up the shape editor, do a round profile. So you can see that that's round. And then just do it negative. So you could have that sitting right the way down there, like so. Or let's do it a bit more realistic. Maybe about 5. So it just comes down slightly. Select apply and then cancel. Okay, so that was the easy bit. The hard bit now is the vectors for the crown. So probably the hardest bit in actually doing this is creating vectors. And that's probably safe to say for most jobs that you're actually modeling, it will be the vectors that are the hardest part, not actually creating the 3D side of it. Right, so let's go to the 2D view. And you can see that I've lost that image now because all of the colour has gone out of the image. So what I need to do is load that image back in. So if I go to Bitmaps and import, and then select that cavalry image again and select open. Okay, so that gives me that image again. If I want to switch between the two of these, let me just turn up the contrast so you can see. If I select that cavalry, you can see that it's the one that's 2 colours. Or I can go to that cavalry and that is the full image. Now you can rename those if you want to, I won't bother. Okay, so to do this, what I need to do is go around this manually. So let's start off with these fleur-de-lis at the top. Okay, so to do this, if I go to create a polyline, and normally you'll have draw smooth polylines turned on. Now watch what happens if I try to do that. So if I go around there, you can see that I'm getting all these curves and it's not following the correct shape. So if I press minus on the keyboard, now a quick shortcut is to press S on the keyboard, and that will turn it off. saves you having to go all the way over to the right to keep on turning it off when you need to. So it's quite useful for this particular job. So if I just follow this around like so, and then I'm going to turn on smooth, and then follow this around, let's say like so. And then when I get to the end here, when I'm just about to click on there, turn off smooth. Give you a sharp corner, and then I can put it back on. Again, turn off smooth, put it back on. Again, turn off smooth, and then put it back on. So you just keep on doing this all the way around there. Okay, so you just keep on doing that all the way around it, and then do this over all of this. Now, I'm not going to have you watch me do all of these vectors because it would probably take me about 15 minutes to do all of this, and it would be quite a boring video. So what I'm going to do is import some that I created earlier. So if I go to import, and then open up these crown vectors, and then you can see the vectors that I've already created. So if I drop the contrast slide down there, you can take a look at them. Now, they're not perfect, but they're absolutely fine for this particular job. So this is going to help me model the crown. Now you can also see that I've got overlapping vectors. Now, when you're modeling, this is completely different to machining. So if you were trying to machine something with overlapping vectors, that would be a complete no-go. But when you're modeling, sometimes you need to have vectors overlapping so you can get a nice blend. So you can see down the bottom here, where I've got this portion and it's overlapping on sort of the fur on the bottom of the crown. And the reason that I've done that is so I get a nice blend in with the bottom of the crown. Right, so let's start modeling this. So let's take a look in the 3D view and then turn on the vectors. And you can see that I've got all of my vectors here. Select the outside, going to do the same sort of process, bring that up. So I'm working from the back. So open up the shape editor and let's do a square. Let's limit it to a height again. Let's try 1 millimeter this time. Start height, let's say 2 millimeters. Turn off the vectors if you want to see it. Let's turn on the vectors again. Let's take a plan view. Just make sure that none of the vectors sort of intersect or go over it. Doesn't look too bad, to be completely honest. So let's apply that. Turn off the vectors if you want to see it. Okay, all good. Turn on the vectors again. Let's maybe add the circles for this. So let's take a plan view of this. And let's select all of these circles here. Now it's probably easier to just select all of these. Like so, and then group them together. Okay, so group those together. Like so, and they're then purple. And then I can select all the inside parts. So let's select all the insides. Okay, and then group those together. Just makes it a lot easier when you go into the shape editor. So open up the shape editor again, select those circles, let's turn off the vectors, and then let's just do round ones on these so you can see that they're quite round. Now, you can do this whatever sort of angle that you like. It's entirely up to you. Okay, whatever looks good. So select apply, turn on the vectors again. Let's select these inside ones and let's do a round again, or maybe even a square like so. And this time I'm going to go down. Okay, maybe quite harsh so you can actually see it. And select apply. Right, so let's select maybe that, that, and that. And then let's do, I don't know, maybe a round like so. Let's maybe limit this to a height. So let's say 0.5 millimeter. So like so. You can add a start height if you want it to come up. You can make it subtract if you want it to actually be sunk in. I quite like that. So let's apply that. And then these sections here, let's add these. So let's do a round on those. I quite like that sunk in as well on the subtract. So let's sink that in. And then the fleur-de-lis sections. Let's turn off the vectors, do a round. Now, I don't like that sunk in. The reason being is that when you start modelling and you've got lots of nodes, you get all of these sort of lumpy, bumpy bits. And they don't really look too good. So what I would tend to do then is limit it. So let's limit it to a height, like so. Now, this one, let's add that so it's on the top. Now, you don't have to have it round, you can have it square, so it's a chamfer. So let's say that that's okay, let's apply that. Then let's come down to the bottom, let's say that. Let's just do a round on that, just add that. And then we've got this here. So let's maybe do a square on that, but limit it to a height. So let's say 0.5 millimeter, that looks fine. Let's add that. Now, when I come down to this, down the bottom here, this piece of fur, what I need to do with this is I need to blend this in. So what I'm going to do is select both of those, turn off the vectors, and let me just show you what it looks like when I add it. So you can see that this is being added. And you can also see if I move around, that the tops of this bit is being added to what's lying underneath it. And it doesn't really look right. So what you need to do is do this as a merge high, and then it will blend in. Like I said before, if you're not sure what all of these modes mean, watch the shape editor video. It explains them all in detail. So with it being merged high, it's actually lying underneath the relief. So what we need to do is add it onto the top of it. And the way to do that is that we need it to start higher. So the start height, let's say if we change that to be 1 mil, 2 millimeters, 3 millimeters, 4 millimeters, 5 millimeters, 6, you can see it starts to break through. 7 millimeters, 8 millimeters, and you can see that it's coming through the top of it and it's not doing what it done previously, which was adding to the top of it. So what I'm going to do is limit this to a height. So let's limit it to a height of maybe 0.5, and that's probably a little bit too high, the start height. So let's say 7.5. You can see that that's just coming through there. So apply that. Then what else have we got here? So we've got all of these jewels here. So let's select all of those. Like so, and let's do these maybe round. Make sure that you go to add, and that looks absolutely fine. Let's apply that. Let's add these. Now, a lot of this is just literally what you think looks good. So maybe have them sunk in and apply and cancel that. Okay, and there you can see that's basically the finished product, and they have a relief. Now, if you need to resize this afterwards, so let's say this artwork is 300 by 300, but let's say that I wanted the badge to be exactly, let's say 250 millimeters. So make sure that you've got no vectors selected, otherwise it will free up whatever's in that vector. So select Relief Cookie Cutter, freeze it all up, and then you can change the size of it. So let's say, make sure that you've got the padlock on, and let's say that I want this to be 250. Let's turn off the padlock so I can make sure that it's exactly 250 by 250 and apply. So that's now resized to that size. And if you want to, you can change the Z range. So let's say that I want that to be 10 millimeters and apply. And then I can paste that down. And I know that that's exactly the right size that I want. So I can now turn off the zero plane, and then that leaves me with my relief. So that's sort of an introductory sort of relief modelling within Carveco Maker Plus. I hope you found it useful, and I'll see you on the next video. Take care, goodbye.